Hello, welcome to Dad's Time Out. I'm Chean Loke here today again, and we're talking about how family affects our life decisions. But before we get started, if you haven't subscribed, click subscribe now. And if you do want to support this channel financially, you can visit leebrands.com.au. But life decisions, I'm going to start off.
Sure.
Before we had the children, I was free to do a lot of projects. I'll do different businesses or different artistic projects. And if we wanted to go out and do something, we're just going to do it. But when extra human beings come into our family, yes, or I guess we can call them those, it changes. And one of the big changes for me is that because I really loved doing different businesses before we had children, and one of the things I had to do was scale all that down. And I've said to many people, I can't remember what I've told you, but I'm telling you now, I've said to a lot of people, I'm going to wait until they all get into school and don't want to have much to do with me anymore, and then I'll go crazy again. So what about you? How has children affected your life's decisions?
So we spent about 12 years, my wife and I, 12 years abroad in London working, and we've only just come back. And that was a decision that was driven essentially due to having children.
12 years?
12 years.
That means I've seen you probably 3 times in those 12 years. Once in London, once here, and then once before you left.
Yeah. I'm back. That's 12 years like that.
Wow. Well, I'm not going to catch up with you of what happened in 12 years, but what's brought you back?
So with the arrival of our second child, that was certainly a factor. Yes. Not the only factor, because we had our first child in London. We thought we could do the same again. There was no necessarily a massive driver to just up sticks and move home. But when you start to layer all the rest of the considerations in, then the move back becomes a little bit more compelling. So our eldest, in September of this year just gone by, should have started school in London. But because we couldn't get her into the school that we wanted to, that meant that we really need to reconsider whether or not staying in London was the actual right decision. Because obviously, as parents, you want to make sure that you're giving your child the best education. If you don't think that you can actually do that, then you have to really think about should you and can you move. And if you move within a local area in London, that might get you some part of the way, but it might not be the exact sort of environment that you would like to bring your child up in. So we were fortunate enough, obviously, to have both Australian citizenship and British citizenship as well, and being able to then come home to a place that we knew, an education system that we think we know, seemed to make sense. And that was an option that was available to us. And we made that decision to come back for our children, and for our children to spend time with our parents who, they're getting older.
Yeah, that's right.
And the more time you spend away from them, it might be great to live in London and travel around, and we do miss that. But then equally, your children don't get to spend time with their grandparents, which, money can't buy. You can't buy that time and the unconditional love that they have for their grandkids.
That's right. And grandkids need to be spoiled sometimes as well, don't they?
Yes, much to the dismay of many parents out there. But yes, that's it really is the grandparents' prerogative to spoil their grandchildren.
It's one of those things as well where we look at the grandparents and go, well, how come they're spoiling the kids all the time? But when we get there,
we can do the same thing.
I reckon it'll be the same. Yeah, there's people that we know, and again, it's an older generation, and they decided to move away from a promising career. This particular person was in China and was one of the top surgeons as well. and for the sake of the next generation, moved over here. Came over. They worked in the kitchen and trying to learn English and all those things, and eventually ended up doing acupuncture here. So left all that behind again for the sake of the young ones. And it's one of those things where this sacrifice, we don't really know what our parents did for us until we're at this point ourselves. And I had this conversation with someone recently. We asked each other, is this generation, are we going through a really tough time compared to all the other generations? It feels like it.
It's interesting you say that. I was having the same conversation with my parents about what it was like for them when they first came over from Malaysia, which is where I'm born.
Yeah.
And my mother, being the youngest of 13 children, being taken care of by her older siblings, had to come to a foreign country back in the early 80s and look after 2 kids not speaking their language particularly well and having absolutely no support network, and having to try and make that work. And my mum was awfully homesick, and that sacrifice that she made, and that's all relative to their upbringing around the struggles that they have. And some families go through much tougher times, war, for example. And those are really examples of true sacrifice, where you need to get away in order for your family's survival. And so I think about now, and I think relocating from London to Melbourne, that's not a big deal.
Yeah. And really thinking about sometimes when I have a friend of mine who came over by boat from Vietnam, and he was 1 year old on the boat. Imagine your newborn on this boat for a week, crammed up. That's sacrifice, isn't it?
That's true sacrifice, and it's still happening.
Yeah.
So if you ask me about the sort of sacrifices that we have to make as parents in this day and age, in a country like this, they're pretty small in comparison to other parents around the world who have to make some larger sacrifices. Well, I think even where we are now, there are again various level of sacrifices. But I guess for us, we're very lucky because we have the choice as well. Absolutely,
we have the choice to sacrifice or not. Whereas with some people, there is no choice. You just have to do it. And what an interesting topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all right. Well, we want to bring it to the viewers as well. Everyone has a different degree of sacrifice for that they make for the next generation. If you want to share a story, write a comment below. You just don't know if your story can help someone on the other side of the world, and we'll enjoy reading those as well if they come. So thank you again, Chean.
No problems.
And we'll see you again soon.
Great.